drought has forced many producers, both livestock and crop, to change the way they manage their operations. Some farmers were pushed to cutting corn for silage that will eventually be used as a livestock feed. Galen Erickson talked with us this week about testing the product for nitrates and how prevalent cutting has been so far this year.
Well, it's difficult to have data on actually what was put up, but you certainly hear a lot of stories about people that were trying to salvage drought damaged fields, and they hadn't put up silage for 10 years, and this year they put up silage. So it's hard to quantify, but I think there's a lot of silage sitting around, most of it this year, a lot of it from drought damaged corn that they want to try and salvage.
Is the process any different this year? I know there are some nitrate concerns, but how does that differ from a normal year?
Well, theoretically, we're past the time of putting it up in most areas, and so the first consideration is it's got to have enough moisture to ensilo or to actually be able to pack it in and ferment it, and that's no different from a regular year or drought damaged silage. So it's generally we would recommend minimum of 60% moisture. 65% moisture would have been better. If people put up silage and they measured it was drier than that, then there's some real concerns on how well that'll ensilo in the process. But if they got it put up at the right moisture, it'll go through a fermentation process, and essentially the ensiling makes it produce acid. The bacteria that are fermenting it produce acid, and eventually it preserves itself. So it's a great way to handle the feed, and it's a great way to handle corn residue, and it's certainly a good way to handle drought damaged fields.
Is there a need to test for nitrates?
Yeah, I would recommend, there are some on-farm tests that can be done. Some of them actually can get to a rough quantity of nitrates, but some of them are just qualitative, meaning is there nitrates there or not. So if you put up drought damaged silage, I think it's safe to bet that you should test for nitrate just to make sure that the levels are safe to feed. You know, if you're feeding it to feedlot cattle and beef cattle that are growing or finishing, they're probably the most tolerant. Especially though if you start looking at cows, you really want to be careful on how much nitrate could be in the silage.
How much value can a producer get out of it, Galen, and you can say this year or any year?
Well, we've been doing some research on actually using corn silage as a corn replacement for finishing cattle, and generally speaking, silage is about, we use TDN, would be a TDN of 70 to 75, whereas corn's a TDN of 90, so that's kind of gives you the relative break of what it's like relative to corn. Drought damaged silage, there's not a lot of data available, but we estimate it's 75 to 80% the value of normal silage. All depends on the amount of grain. So corn plants above ground are about half forage, half grain in a normal silage year. If there's no grain, it's all forage, and so really there's all kinds of different levels of grain out there that's been put up as silage, and that dictates some of its value.